This is Performance Anxiety on the Pantheon Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Mark. And today's guest makes me appreciate the evolution of sound. I'm joined by Shane Harrington, the founder, guitarist, and self-described dictator of the band Cinemartyr. And this is actually take 2 of the podcast. Shane and I were deep into a great conversation before I realized I was having a technical issue. So we started over. Shane hails from New York City via Limerick, Ireland, aka Stab City. There really wasn't a whole lot going on in Stab City outside of Shane's father's traditional Irish band, Irish Rambling House. So when Fugazi came to town, it was big news. And after that show, everyone who was there started a band, including Shane. But there really weren't many places to play rock music in Limerick, so Shane traveled a lot. But a trip to New York City proved as life-changing as the Fugazi show. It was also one of the craziest stories I've ever heard. It involves visa fraud and the FBI. And when Shane made the move to New York City, his band OST, original soundtrack, came with him, which was easy since it was basically just him. But streaming issues surrounding the band's name, placing the music in the soundtrack genre, forced Shane to rechristen the band Cinemartyr. But that's not the only change. The band seems to change its sound with almost every album. Listening to the discography in order is a journey of transformation. And in my humble opinion, it seems to be the reverse of most bands. Instead of mellowing out as the band gets older, Cinemartyr seems to be getting more aggressive. And the latest album, Opt Out, is the most aggressive yet. So check out the album on Bandcamp and give them a follow at cine.martyr on Instagram. Give us a follow at PerformanceANX. Grab some merch at performanceanx.threadless.com. Float us some coffee at ko-fi.com/performanceanxiety. And I hope you're prepared for a roller coaster of a ride with Shane Harrington of Cinemartyr on this episode of Performance Anxiety on the Pantheon Podcast Network.
Beautiful. All right, yeah, this is, okay, I will start again. This is Shane Harrington from Cinemartyr. You are listening to Performance Anxiety Podcast, and we're going on tour this summer, and we'd love to see you out there. How was that? Did I miss anything? Oh, dang. You can put distortion on the entire track and some delay. Just it can be a musical collaboration between the two of us. Beautiful. All right, yeah, this is, okay, I will start again. This is Shane Harrington from Cinemartyr. You are listening to Performance Anxiety Podcast, and we're going on tour this summer. We're awake now.
Well, that's good. And, you know, we're kind of a little more comfortable and also,
right.
So I'm watching it like a hawk right now, and it's rolling, because I pulled up and it showed 15 seconds, and I'm like, what the so I'm sorry about that. I have no idea what happened, so
it's all good.
Okay, so take 2.
Yes.
All right. So to let everybody in on the joke, what happened was Shane and I recorded for 30 minutes, and before realizing that my software had crashed and I had about 15 seconds worth of material recorded. So we are going with part 2. This is take 2, edit 2, the remix. I don't know.
You know, this is what happens when you try and make things.
It does, especially on your own, one-man band, not being an engineer or a software technician.
You don't get the big Apple Podcasts production crew who are running around getting you coffee and checking the wires.
But it is a testament to the conversation we were having, though, because I was enjoying it so much I wasn't going back and checking time on the software. So I was enjoying it so much that I should have been being a little more diligent on how the software was working, and realizing it had crashed. So we will start over, and you know what? Second take was the demo. This is the real thing.
Cool.
All right, so we will start off finding out a little bit more about where you came from. Like just about every other episode I do, you were born in Limerick, Ireland, in an area known as Stab City, which sounds absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, so very pretty, peaceful name for a town.
It's bucolic.
Yes. Again, before I trash my hometown, it's not what I mean to do. I do, I always have to preface it with the fact that, there are amazing people there, and the town has changed a lot in recent years, and it's a great spot now. But growing up, that was not the case. Yeah, Step City, I guess it got that name because it had the highest murder rate in Europe for a while. It was the murder capital of Europe, and just not a fun place to grow up. We were living in a place called South Hill, which was the number one ghetto, I guess, if that's the claim to fame you want to call it. Maybe neck and neck with one other spot, but
oh wow,
we were living between two feuding gangs at the time.
Oh.
So being the house on the row between those was not very fun. Is a bit of a rough spot. My parents divorced while we were there, and a few years later, when I was around 12 or 13, we were lucky enough to get out and get into some council housing in a much more peaceful neighborhood,
like Punchtown or something.
Yeah, just
something a little less violent than stabbing.
Hugstown. Yeah. Hugsville, Ireland. Yeah, just a lot of friendly leprechauns.
Okay.
Yeah,
they're in their pots of gold and the clovers.
Yeah, they want to give you the pots of gold. They're not the vindictive types in Dublin who want to hoard the pots of gold.
They're like the Lucky Charms types of leprechauns.
This is a little aside, but you just reminded me once we were talking about We Come in Pieces. We were on tour, I think, in Germany once, and these Marines, these dudes, we happened to meet some American Marines at a bar, and super nice guys, but one of them wasn't too. Let's just say I'm not sure how he ended up in the military or anything, but he was like a little drunk, and we were talking, and our drummer just was taking a piss with him, and we managed to convince him that all the alcohol in Ireland is fought over by these wars with the leprechauns. And the dude was just like eating it hook, line, and sinker.
Oh.
Like, first of all, he didn't question leprechauns. He just assumed that they were real and that there was wars. Yeah, and he was like, "Oh man, that's so tough for you guys. I can't believe you got to do that just to drink." Like, he was like really crestfallen. Like,
I'm so glad we had to do this again because I love that.
That always sticks with me. I'm like, that guy was in the military.
Yeah.
Like, he was probably in charge of some really serious things,
Oh yeah, he's the guy that has the nuclear codes.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man.
I'm going to pretend to be surprised sometimes here. So,
it's all good. Yeah. I'll try, and I'm going to try and say some stuff in a more original way.
Okay. All right. So, this gag is going to go through the entire first half hour of this episode now. So, what got you into music in the first place? There's music in the family, if I remember our first conversation correctly.
Yeah. Just always as I mentioned, my dad was. He still is really involved in traditional Irish music. He puts on a show, a touring show every year called the Rambling House, the Irish Rambling House, and it's like a troupe. It's like it has more members than Slipknot. It has like 24 members or something. but they do like traditional Irish music, and they do storytelling and all of these very rural Irish things, I guess. I don't know what the word is, but they have a thing called the brush dance where a guy literally dances with a brush. He does like Irish dancing that's centered around this brush that's on the floor. It's something they used like back when my dad was young. They made their own entertainment. They didn't have TVs, and the radio. You had to take the battery for the radio to town to recharge it so you could listen to your radio and that kind of thing.
Oh my god!
So people would get. Yeah, it was like that. But people would gather in, a house and, entertain themselves with music and stories and stuff. And that was, I think the traditional name for that was the Rambling House. And that's where this thing came from. Yeah. So growing up, I think my dad really wanted me to be more into the traditional Irish music, but there was a bit of a struggle there, and that didn't happen. I was too involved in Michael Jackson first. That was like my big love, and then I think it moved on to Nirvana shortly after that.
Oh man! And then eventually Fugazi.
Yes, of course, yeah.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. Before you skip over this ad, give me 1 minute. Like most podcasts, I pick sponsors carefully, and I use the products that advertise here. Pure Spectrum CBD is a product that has been really beneficial for me. They have a wide variety of great products that can be used on a daily or as needed basis. I've been using the tincture every day, and it's been wonderful for easing anxiety. And I absolutely love the isolate. I use it instead of acetaminophen or ibuprofen, and it's worked so well for the relief of aches and pains. They also have soaks, lotions, salves, gummies, and more, plus an entire line for fitness recovery. They even have products for your pets. See everything they offer at purespectrumcbd.com. And if you have questions, they're there to help. They helped me when I had no idea where to start. After you fill your cart, use code PerformanceANX for 15% off your purchase. Pure Spectrum CBD, Pure Spectrum CBD, Pure Spectrum CBD.
And I was saying to you earlier that like Limerick is not Dublin. It's not a tour destination for bands by any means. It's like the third or fourth biggest city in Ireland. And we were lucky enough to get one day we just saw these posters around town for a band called Fugazi, and then someone told us they were American. So we were, of course, like, there's Americans in our town. We have to go because they're American. It's so exotic and crazy. We only see Americans on TV. We'll hear the accents in real life.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I never thought of it that way. Man.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's the thing. So much of the world is like the cultural consciousness of the world is formed by American TV. Like, we have Irish television programs going up, but like so much of our minds was, like, oh, America, this was pre-America 2023, I guess. So there was still a lot of, there still is a lot of people still love America, but yeah, it's a complicated subject, I guess.
Yeah,
but
for
back then there was definitely kind of a air of mysticism and like wonder around the idea of going to America, I guess. Yeah. And so we were going just out of curiosity, really, as kids, that like we saw older guys in the scene who were like, fuck, Fugazi are playing, like everyone's going to go to that show, and we were like, wanted to be with that crowd or whatever, and we were the only reason we could really go was because it was all ages. They were a band that did all ages shows, and it was it was just it was a life-changing experience. Like we were just we came out drenched wet. We had never heard music that loud in our lives, and we got the VHS tape at the merch stand, which was the Instrument documentary about their touring life, and we watched it that night with tinnitus in our ears, and
oh man,
it like changed our brain chemistry. We all started bands the next day, like and that just whether we liked it or not, that was the trajectory of our lives for the next until now.
So were you playing music at that point? Had you learned an instrument at that point with your dad being a traditional Irish musician? Was that something that you were doing before the Fugazi show?
I'm a little hazy on that. I think they both coincided. I think I was learning guitar around that time. My dad, after agreeing to finally let me do guitar instead of banjo, he got me some lessons with a guy out of town, and I think I did like 3 or 4 classes with that guy, and then a friend of mine showed me what a power chord was, and once I figured that out, I stopped going to lessons. So that I was fine then. So it was around that time I started also like learning guitar, but I was always obsessed with like live performance and music in general. Like as a kid, you have your like G.I. Joe figures. We call them action men over in Ireland. But like as a kid, it would always be like action movie oriented, and it would be like we were shooting each other and there's like explosions and you got to rescue someone and blah, blah, blah. Right. But I remember as I was getting to like 8, 9 or 10, the games would change. I would always, because I would be the one that would set up what the concept of the game was, I guess, with my local neighborhood friends. And I started making them about performance. So I would like build these little mini stages, and I would draw the audience, and I would put that in front of the stage. And I would come up with like dance moves for these characters, and like they would have performance times and all this kind of stuff. So I think my mind was kind of heading in that general direction.
Oh, wow.
It was kind of like a Michael Jackson adult mind, you know, trying to drown out the traditional Irish music that was also being pumped into the house. But so yeah, I guess I was headed that way.
Wow, you just brought back a memory for me, which may or may not make the podcast. I don't know, because people are more interested then people aren't interested in my memories.
Oh, but I want to hear it.
When I have a younger brother and a younger sister, but this was just concerns my brother. He's about 2.5 years younger than I am, and back in the especially in the early 80s, we would play with those green G.I. Joe men, or not G.I. Joe men, the Green Army men. And we would have all these setups, like for Christmas. We would get like the beaches of Anzio or Navarone, and it would just be this play set with, you put all these little Green Army men on, and then you would just, pretend to shoot each other. And my brother and I, we quickly evolved that into war movies. And we didn't have a camera to film it on, but what we would do is we would set everybody up all around the house, and then we would put on like the Rocky III soundtrack or something, cool. And then we would choreograph what was going on in the war to the music that was coming out on for the soundtrack.
Wow! I
totally forgot about that until just now.
That's so funny. That is like the creative mind, at work. That's telling you that this kid wants to make stuff.
Yeah. And my brother just published he's got a book.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, he just wrote a history of the Mamas and the Papas.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's awesome. That's so sweet. That's, cool. I hope that does well, man. There's an audience for that. So that's awesome.
Yeah. Yes. And it's his first book.
Oh, awesome.
So, all right, now I kind of lost where we were.
One quick thing.
Yeah.
My headphones disconnected and I put them back in, and I'm just paranoid. I just want to make sure it didn't stop the software for some reason.
Oh, dude, you're good. Good thinking. I think since it's on we're still rolling.
Okay, cool. Yeah, just wanted to make sure.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Fortunately, that's on I don't think that should affect anything on our end.
Cool.
I didn't even notice a change in the sound or anything, so it sounds fine.
Good.
So, you formed a band like the day after a Fugazi show. You're playing for a while, but the first thing that I came across with you as a member of a recorded band is We Come in Pieces. Was that the first time that you had something that was recorded and released, or is there something before that I don't know about?
There was something before that, yeah. So I mentioned to you before, there was this band called Not Important. That was my first band. It was kind of more of a like punk band. I was listening to like Pearl Jam and Nirvana and like Incubus at the time, and all my band members were listening to like Blink-182 and like pop punk, so there was again that struggle of just like me not being into the same music at all, but there's no other band available, so I got to be in that band.
Wow.
I never recorded with that band, but the next band after that was the first band I ever recorded with, and they were called Les Enfants Terribles. The name was taken from a Metal Gear Solid thing, which was taken from a famous French thing.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. And that was one of the members of Not Important, myself and some other local musicians. And it was like incredibly, it was the opposite of Not Important. It was like super experimental. We had like we had an accordion player. We had keyboards. It was just teenagers just trying to make the weirdest stuff we possibly could.
Any banjo?
No, the banjo never made it in, but there was some weird instruments. The guy who played keyboard in the band, he did go on to make banjos out of other implements. Like, in Ireland we have a sport called hurling. I don't know if have you ever seen that? The sticks, it's like super dangerous.
Yeah.
He has since, I believe, made a guitar out of hurling, which is pretty cool. But that band, what was I going to say? Yeah, it was like super, super experimental. And I think I had some interesting point, but I may have forgotten it. Sorry. It'll come to me again.
Well, if it pops up, just blurt it out, because that's what we do here. So I did listen to We Come in Pieces, which I thought was really cool. Definitely, I hear the Fugazi influence in that band.
Right, yeah, that was definitely there. Yeah, that band was closer, I guess, in influence for myself and the guys who were in it, but there was still that tug of war of like, those guys were into, again, kind of just straight up punk stuff, I guess, and I was into, at the time, a lot of math rock like Hella and Terra Melos and stuff like that, you know, and I wanted everything to be chopped up and the weirdest time signature possible, and that was clashing with the guys who wanted really hooky choruses and 4/4 rhythms and stuff like that. So that band is kind of like a result of that creative struggle, I guess, the way that band sounds. But yeah, we had some good moments, I think, and the best thing about that band was it was the first time I got to tour, and we toured Ireland a bunch and went to Europe and the UK. And for all the head annoyance, I was going to say trauma, but I'm trying to not use that word recently when it actually isn't traumatic, but I guess stress is the word. Just violent stress, what you call it. It was still a very formative experience, you know. Yeah, we just didn't know a lot of people in our area who were doing stuff like that. It was kind of rare in Ireland to do stuff like that.
Then there's OST. Original soundtrack. Was that happening at the same time as We Come in Pieces? And was it just you to start with?
Yeah. That was my like my sneak away from everyone and do what I actually wanted to do project. You know, that was just me in my bedroom, working through my depression on tape, pretty much. And that was, again, a bit of a reaction to being in that band. You know, I needed a different outlet where I could really just get a bit more creative fulfillment, I guess, and learn the ropes of how to record and how to write songs and express myself in a different way. And so OST was the quote unquote solo project, I guess, around that time. Yeah.
Okay. So where you're at in Ireland at this time, are there a lot of places to play for bands, or do you have to travel in order to be heard?
We had one local venue. There's a couple, and it changed a lot over the years. There was one solid venue called Baker Place, and the cool thing about that venue is over the years we would get some really friggin' cool bands there that would be just doing DIY tours, I guess. We get a lot of math rock bands from Japan, you know, and it was so cool because nothing happened in that town. Like we had nothing, like there's not a lot of rock and roll culture really around that time, but we would get bands like Light from Japan and Toe came through there. Wow. And Terra Melos came once. That was a lot later, but they came once. And I always forget names of things when I'm asked, but there was so many cool like Tube Lord, Enemies, like that kind of math rock, experimental, noise rocky bands. We were lucky enough that for some reason a lot of them would put Limerick on their day. I guess the thing is, if you come to the UK to tour, it's only a ferry ride to Ireland, and you might as well play some. If you're going to play one show there, you might as well play three. And some people would put us on the bill, I guess. And so we had that little venue that, you know, allowed us to play shows a lot. But yeah, we would have to go to Dublin and other places. We take shows wherever we could get them, tiny little Irish pubs in small towns. And eventually, going to the UK, there's much more infrastructure for rock and punk there. So we were able to play a lot more venues over there. But all very DIY, bearing the brunt of the cost and losing money every time, but really enjoying ourselves, you know.
Oh, see, that's the important part. But we mentioned this on take one, but you had gone to art school, right? And that's what really gave you the taste for New York City, right? Yeah. So you came over on a trip, and that New York kind of got its hooks into you. Yeah.
I always had a bit of an obsession with New York to begin with. Like I was really into like some of the music from the no wave scene and bands like Sonic Youth and Swans and stuff like that. And I guess in movies, I didn't really realize it was New York at the time, but so much of the stuff I loved was set in that city. And yeah, I remember there was a trip in the first year of college to go to New York, and it was so expensive I couldn't afford it. But you know, I begged like my parents to put in a little bit. I begged my brother to put in a little bit. I probably worked like a job for 2 weeks leading up to it just to like get the money together. And we just went for 10 days to see art galleries in Chelsea, and we were at the Chelsea hostel, not to be confused with the Chelsea hotel.
Right.
And we were all in bunk beds, and it was just like a totally formative experience. The atmosphere of the city just like hit me like a fucking ton of bricks. And, you know, I was like, after I leave school, I'm going to try and move there, you know, and I hope I can live the rest of my life there or at least make the switch there. So that was like a long-term mission for me.
Which actually came true after you left art school. You made the move.
Yeah. I took advantage of the recent graduate visa that we have access to over in Ireland. We're lucky enough to have access to, I guess, because of Ireland has pretty good relations with New York.
Yeah.
And then I hopped around on artist visas for a while. And there's a pretty crazy story around the lawyer that got me and a couple of my friends our artist visas.
Oh, really?
That involves the FBI and someone jumping off the top of a building.
What?
If you want to hear that, I can tell you that, but it's, I don't want to, it's kind of crazy and might be a little bit of a downer, but I can tell you.
We can always bring the show back up.
Right.
As long as we don't end on this story, we're good. Let me make sure I'm still recording. The software hasn't crashed again. We're good. We're good.
Cool. The thing is, it's actually not that much of a downer. It's so surreal and wacky and New York that we use this. I'm not going to give the guy's name because for the sake of his family, but we use this immigration lawyer that a lot of Irish students were using at the time, or post recent graduates. And he was referred to us by someone else. He's based here in the city. My friend Steve, who I used to play music with over here, he is someone he had been here for a few years, and on a trip home, he got stopped at immigration. They took his passport, and he ended up on a no-fly list for 5 years. I'm not 100% sure of why that happened, but part of that story is the lawyer we used. One day we got an email from some sort of company who deals with the fallout of these things, saying that he was being investigated by the FBI for forging identification, I think, and for making fake signing off on papers himself for other people.
Oh, wow.
So this guy, I remember being at his office, there was, people in the waiting room waiting to go through for the same thing I was doing. So he was seeing multiple people a day, quite a big business for this kind of thing. Yeah. And really nice guy. But then I looked up the news around his name, and I saw that he was being investigated by the FBI, and charges had been pressed, and he was due to go to jail or appear in court or something like that. And then about a week later, his obituary turns up. The guy, there was so much pressure. The dude went up to the top of his building and jumped off it and passed away. So this is about 2 years after I had my second artist visa. So I was in the clear. Everything had passed already. I didn't know if everyone who was in process at that time with their visas, where they were sent off to the government to have them checked or whatever, they all got screwed. Whatever money they spent was null, and a lot of them had to go back home. So it really sucked for them and sucked for that guy's family, I'm sure. But it was just that feeling of like that can only happen here. Like you get a crooked immigration lawyer who gets investigated by the FBI, and then he commits suicide in broad daylight. It was just so surreally New York that I was just like, I feel so lucky to be here by the skin of my teeth, almost could have gone so much worse. And I don't know if that's connected to my friend Steve's issue at the immigration or not, but there's basically he had files on all of us, and this company had reached out to us to give us our documents back, basically. And the guy was like, well, you seem okay. You seem like your case is fine. You shouldn't be hearing anything more. And I was just like, holy shit.
Wow.
This is after living here for about 6 years and like knowing that my friend got stuck here. I was like, is the life I've established here going to disappear all of a sudden? But
that's got to be. It sounds like you have just kind of lived in a world of stress from Stab City until New York.
Dude, emphasis on the anxiety part of the name of your podcast. It is really only in the last few years. Sorry, I'm just filling up some water here.
No worries, man.
My mouth is dry. It is really only in the last 4-5 years that my mental health has gotten to a good place. Like, it was very much like coming here with little to no money and not much of a plan in terms of like living like a normal person was super stressful, and I was there's a family history of depression in my family, and and
in Ireland in general, I think.
Man, it's just the Irish way, and my mom is a great woman, but she's unfortunately is a prime example of what some of the issues of Ireland at that time can do to a person. And just like New York is a hard place to move to, and especially when it's like not, when it's a different country and all that. But I'm so glad I did it, and I'm so glad I'm here, and there's a lot more stability in my life now, and that allows you to create better. Like when you are there's that romantic idea of like the tortured artist is complete bullshit. You can make anything when you're worrying about everything else,
Yeah, it's really, it does hamper the art,
Yeah.
And in one sense, it can help maybe with ideation, but actual completion of the art and actual creation, I don't think it helps at all. At least not in my case.
Yeah, I think it can be a good therapeutic outlet, and you get these little dribs and drabs of projects that get done and stuff, and it's helpful. Maybe you can get you to the next thing, but as far as consistency and as you're saying, execution, it's just not possible. It's not,
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. Let's talk some music here. You came over, so OST, since it was you, kind of came over with you, and you ended up having to change the name to Cinemartyr because of genre issues.
Yeah, very banal issue, but I was getting with the modern world and starting to upload our catalog to Spotify, and Spotify just wouldn't take OST because it's a prefix, I guess, for soundtracks. And I was like, fuck, I either stay off Spotify or I change, and all the other digital distributors besides Bandcamp, or I changed the name. And there was quite the struggle to find the right name, but we could live with Cinemartyr, and it still had the film oriented theme to it. Know, for me, like movies are like a very therapeutic thing, and that always is part of the core theme, I guess. And so here we are with that name. Who knows if it's any good?
Well, like I said before, that's a recurring theme on this podcast and of the podcast, because I'm always second guessing performance anxiety as a name for my podcast, because I get emails from people trying to get therapists on the show, and that's not really what I do. But maybe
not until we figure out that that setup where it's like musicians getting help on your show,
exactly.
And then 2 weeks later you're on Oprah Winfrey's show, like about how you revolutionized the landscape, And
I'm not a selfish person, Shane. It's we came up with that idea together. Right. So you're knee deep in this with me. So. So I went back and I was listening to the OST/Cinemartyr material, the whole discography, and what really sticks out to me and I find fascinating is that almost none of the albums sound similar to another. In fact, the only the two that have the closest connection for me are Invisible Ink for Sketching Ghosts, which is a great title, by the way. I love that. And Dreams During Hibernation. Invisible Ink starts off with Tokyo Trust Fund, which to me sounds like it came from the band Hum. I love Hum.
Because we do not know when we will die, we get to think of life as an inexhaustible well. And yet everything happens only a certain number of times. and a very small number, really. How many more times will you remember a certain afternoon of your childhood, an afternoon that is so deeply a part of your being that you can't even conceive of your life without it?
But it also morphs into some soundtracks sounding stuff with Portuguese Rosé, ambient in Night Loop, and the song All of This Can Be Fixed, which is a fascinating track to me because it's a little different from most of the stuff, and it has a hint of what's to come in the very last two Cinemartyr albums to me. I can see or hear maybe more of a connection to what you're doing now with that song more than any others.
Right. I think that song as well was probably last to be recorded. So I was, like when you start recording a record, you kind of warm up as you go. And by the time you're recording the last song, you almost want to go back with the vigor you have now to just fix some things at the end. But that song was probably recorded because I'm learning to record at that point and learning to produce and do song structure and stuff. That song was probably recorded at my most confidence. So it makes sense that would kind of point towards the future a little bit more, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I listened to those two, and then I ended up listening to, obviously, the next one in line, which is Uncaused. That's a complete shift in sound to a more indie rock type of sound. Again, the opener is awesome. Social. I love that. Hill, Escape Velocity. The songs are great, but it's a complete shift in sound. Was there a reason behind the shift?
Yeah, I think for one, I just wanted to make a more robust sound, something fuller, something bigger. And I was trying to push myself as much as possible at that time. I think a lot of influences at that time for me were a little more folky indie, and it's probably the atmosphere of New York at that time as well that was bleeding into it a bit more. I think maybe I had a vision for the band, a future live band that could play this stuff and might look like that, I think. But I think a lot of these records are like a cataloging of me feeling my way through the territory of creating music and learning as I went. So it's kind of like when you go in a direction, but you want to. You're where you want to go, and the only way you get there is by taking so many turns that you find out what doesn't work and what does work, and eventually the arrow starts getting straighter and straighter towards where you want to go. So I think that's kind of what was happening there. Conceptually and all that, I think I was just dealing with a lot of themes. That was probably like the lowest point for me in New York. That was just dealing with a lot of mental health issues, and I think that, again, it was just a therapy, I don't know if it's cool or whatever to say that, but it was a therapeutic outlet, for me, just that record, like the song Social, it's just like, not to get too literal, and I don't like prescribing meaning to songs or anything like that. I think it should be for everyone, but I guess like some of the themes were around like, social anxiety and trying to be a musician, but like also being a recluse in your bedroom who's just working on music 24/7.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh, so that's a good question. Is this still basically a solo project at this point, or are you having other people play with you?
Yeah, it's still a solo project. I always like solo projects that sound like full bands, and that was the idea with that. Because at that time I'm still playing in other local New York bands. And that's always my like getaway project that I can really express myself with, I guess. The Cinemartyr OST has and still is a solo project, more or less, but in recent years, with the band members I have now, and with that turn we made towards some more aggressive music, for me, it's I write the music and I record it and perform most of it, maybe aside from the drums, but then I present the music to the band, and they have a certain amount of freedom when we're playing live. Like, I want them to do their interpretation of it. I don't want to be a dictator to the point of they're hired guns or it's boring for them or whatever.
Yeah.
the idea is we are collaborating as a live unit, and everyone's bringing their experience and their unique flair on the instrument to the songs that are already there. So that's had an evolution. In the beginning, OST/Cinemartyr was just like, I'm making this music, it's never going to be played live. If I can play it live, that's great, but it definitely evolved over time. Yeah.
Okay, so even with the new band in the studio, you're more of the dictator, but live it's more democratic.
Yeah, live there's a skeleton that we put the meat on. Yeah, for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, that is awesome. Yeah. Going back to the older stuff before we hit the new albums, there's another change, because after the indie sound, you go total experimental noise ambient with Suffer New York Love, which that's a wild album. That is another huge shift in sound. So was that another stop on the way, or did you purposefully say the next album is going to be more experimental ambient, or was it just organic?
I think you're awakening memories in my head now. I think as much as I hate to say it, I think Uncause, the record before that, the more indie record, I think I was hoping for a lot more from that in terms of reach. Like, I was hoping that was going to break some ground a little more, I think. Yeah. And I put so much time and effort and energy and like I too much of my own self-worth into it, I think. I mean, which is an amazing learning experience. You learn how to appropriately live with your art, but at the time I think it was struggling a bit, and I was hoping that a bit more would come from that record, and I'm so happy with it creatively, but like I was hoping that I could establish more of a footprint with it on the musical landscape, I guess. And that didn't happen at all. And I think that next record was more of a reaction against that. It was doing something completely without worry about, where it would go, where it would end up. And it was music for music's sake, that much more, I guess. And yeah, again, I'm just stating fact. I have no interest in creating a sob story or anything, but like, my mental health was not good at that time. And again, when you're hampered by things like that, you're not ready to. You're not really as interested in creating traditional song structures. Right. Working with other musicians. It's a much more insular, intimate affair when you're in that headspace. So I think that's the result of that for sure. Okay,
and like I said, went back and listened to that. I love Temper. I think that's a really cool track. To me, it's reminiscent. It's like if you smashed Adrian Belew and Robert Fripp together into one person, that cool. That person would have written Temper. So maybe that's you. Maybe you're Fripp, Belew smushed together.
They had one night together back in the 70s, and here I am.
And it's Shane. So again, things change with Death of the First Person, and I try to do as much research as I can on these shows. And so you said that previous Cinemartyr output dealt with the more morose and contemplative side of mental health, and the new album is an intentional step away from that towards a more expressive, loud, and physical chant or scream. That is an amazing change. What caused that shift? I mean, was it something like, I'm tired of feeling sad, I'm tired of this where I'm at, let's just make a change?
I think that's part of it. I think, part of the therapeutic process is depression often leads to anger, and that's kind of a healthy trajectory, because depression and anxiety is helplessness. Anger has a bit more energy to it. You're pissed off about the situation you're in. Mm-hmm. And that sucks. You don't want to be there forever, but it is a dot on the road along the way where you actually have some energy for once, and you can put that energy into something.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, I think as well, like for me, I was playing in other bands all the time. I've been in like two bands. I just can't remember how many bands I've been in. But again, it was that, I had two things happened. Playing the type of music I was playing in OST up until that point is not interesting to me to play live. There's no physicality to it. It's very quiet. It's you go on stage and you present the songs. My favorite bands throw themselves around stage. The body is part of the act. I love seeing visceral live bands. Yes. And I've had that a little bit with some of the bands I've been in, but it was never hitting where I thought I could hit. And instead of being in so many bands and trying to bring my influence to it, I was just like, I am going to create the ideal band I have in my head and not stop asking for permission and just do it, basically. And that's where the swift turn towards something more visceral came from. I think I wanted to get a bunch of people together. We were going to play loud as hell music, and I was finally going to be in a band that I actually wanted to be in. That's no shade on the bands that I have been in, but there's... Right. I don't know, as creative people, we're sensitive and stuff, and we don't always like to put our foot down a lot, and, we want to work with others. But I guess this was the point where I was like, I'm making the project I want to make.
Right. Because if you're not making the music that you want to make, at some point you're going to, depending on your person. Yeah, you're going to make this. All right. I've had enough of compromise. This is I want to do this. It's not working out the way I'm doing it. So let me do it the way I want to do it. And my note on this is that this is when shit gets insane. Because it sounds it doesn't even sound like this band came from the same planet. Right. It sounds, your guitar playing it goes crazy. It's like Tom Morello joined King Crimson and then gave birth to Skunk Anansie or something. It's just insane. Are the people that are in the band now, were they part of this at that time?
Yeah, around that time, I had been in a kind of a mathy poppy band with the drummer a few years previous, and the bassist in that band was the guy Steve, who got stuck in Ireland. So the band kind of died shortly afterwards. Yeah, but a few years later, when I was looking for a drummer, Dave was around, and so Dave was there, and I was like, yes, okay, we got a drummer for this, and then. He was, I'm sure they won't mind me saying this, but he was dating a girl named Amber at the time, and she played guitar and she sang, and she had been in a band experience that had almost made her want to quit music a few years previous to that. It was just such a horrible environment to be in for her, so she was taking a break from music, and she was starting to get that hunger to want to play again. And he was like, oh, we should try out this girl I'm seeing. And I was like, that's a terrible idea. You shouldn't date your band members. And she came into practice with her guitar, and I think she had learned a couple of songs. And after 2 seconds, I was like, she has to be in the band. She is just this amazing untapped talent. I can do certain things with my voice that are aggressive and somewhat atonal and fit the sort of a certain mode of expression, but I'm not a singer, and Amber was that missing piece of she just has this incredible voice and almost perfect pitch. I guess it's perfect, really. And that allowed me to, when I wrote that album that we're just talking about, Death of the First Person, I knew I wanted to have another vocalist who could sing on that record, and this was before the band. I had my wife, Corinne, actually. She's a great singer. She's not a musician. Cool. She's the one who recorded those vocals on that first album. So Amber was coming in to make that live, basically. And then the album after that, Amber recorded her vocals finally. So yeah.
Okay. And it was Aaron part of this as well.
And then Amber brought in Aaron because she was friends with him, who also, as I understand it, was also in a band situation that was not too good. With some, I don't want to speak for him, but there was some not so good stuff going on in that band in terms of relations between the bands. It was just very fraught, and there was a lot of anger, I think, and. He was looking for something different, and we all gelled, and it kind of came together really quick once that happened. And I think we were all the thing we had in common is we all wanted to be in a band that didn't have drama, that was somewhat professional, that people could talk to each other, you could be real with people, and, people would show up on time and all that kind of stuff. So we were pretty relieved to find each other.
Yeah, it sounds like everybody was in the right spot at the right time mentally.
Yeah, I think so.
And to make music that's basically a tornado.
Yeah.
So it's wild. I mean, so I listened to Opt Out a little bit, and then I decided I was going to stop. So I listened to like the first 2 or 3 songs. I'm going to go back and I want to listen to this chronologically, which,
right.
Whoa. Like when CGI came on, I'm like, it was like the record scratch. And like,
right.
Did my player just switch to something else? Because it's quite a startling change. from the ambient noise to CGI, which I guess startling is the word. You also have a song there called Stab City. I mean, were you feeling homesick or something?
Yeah, I had to put him on the map, I guess. Yeah, I think, for me, like, we all have heroes and stuff, but like someone like Michael Gira, like, I encountered your podcast through your interview with Norman Westberg, and that was such an incredible interview. I love that.
Oh, thank you so much.
That band, like he inadvertently gave me permission to not, to just change a lot from record to record.
Yeah.
And in a way, it's almost an inversion of Swans, I guess. I started out with some really light stuff and then became this industrial dirge.
That's
eventually,
true. Yeah.
There was something in looking at Swan's career, there was something in there. The theme of not asking permission was just very powerful to me. And I think some of it maybe was also just getting a little bit better mental health wise as time went on. And just that I don't know if I can express it eloquently, but there was just something in me that had to come out and stop beating around the bush.
I love it. And I love Run From Terror and Keeps Getting Up. Those are my 2 favorites off of that album. Cool. Those are great. And then things just get wilder. So between the last 2 albums, you had some single material coming out, like Lazaretto.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Crazy. Scissors, the Shoo Shoo cover.
Yeah.
And then a kick-ass cover of Swan's New Mind. So with all those done just as single releases, intentionally as single releases, I guess?
Yeah, so between Death of the First Person and the most recent album, Opt Out, we were just playing live a lot, and the band was gelling, and we were finding our identity that way. And as we got towards Opt Out, I was writing more music, and I knew Amber would be able to record on that one because she had fully joined the band. Around the time I was thinking of covers as well. I wanted to just salute bands in my, I guess, I don't want to say scene because I'm not part of the scene, but just that meant a lot to me.
Right.
So that was the impetus to also release some of those alongside that record as well. Okay. And then also you just learn a lot from doing cover work, you know.
I wish I could remember who it was. I had it may have been Alan Epley who said that he recommends everybody start off in a cover band because by playing somebody else's songs, you actually learn how to construct a song.
It's so hard. Like I can write the weirdest time signature thing with like internet dial-up tone on the guitar, and like I can play it really easy, you know, like that comes naturally to me. I don't have to think about that. But we just started doing a live cover of Negative Creep by Nirvana. Oh wow. And that song is just two parts repeated over and over again, the verse and the chorus. Yeah. And it is so hard for me to play. I have to pay attention. I have to pay so much more attention to do something that is that sparse, and that I'm not trying to gloat at like how good I am at doing something technical. It's just that you learn
two different things completely.
It's two different things, and you learn so much about restraint. It's so great. I always hated doing covers growing up. Just there was something about learning other material, but it's such an education. It's such a great education for a musician. Yeah, I agree with that person, even though I wouldn't do it, but I agree.
Well, maybe not being a cover band. Maybe just learn a few to start with.
Learning, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So Opt Out is such a wild album. I was listening to it. So the first thing I want to say is that in the music, I definitely hear a Swans influence, not only in the music, but also in the artwork. You know, I definitely see how Jura has touched you in a musical sense. We'll make that clear.
Yeah.
I don't want to get in trouble.
I'd be okay with either. Yeah.
But like the artwork on Opt Out, it looks like much like the cover New Mind. I mean, it looks like a Children of God era influence of Swans. Yeah, and I love that kind of stuff. I love seeing how a band can influence not just the music, but the visual aspect of another band.
Yeah. Like I have no illusions about it. Like I don't think Michael Giro would like our band. Like we're essentially a noisy punk band, but the influence, like again, talking about like restraint and the starkness, like what they would do in those early records of just one riff hammered to death, that's just cacophonous and large and a sledgehammer over the head. You know, I am more of the ADD generation where I need more going on, I guess, but the aesthetic of Swans is very important to this band for sure. It's not so direct in that we want to sound like them or anything, but it eventually filters into it. And yeah, with the visuals too, I guess for me it's a further delve into not asking permission again, like, and refine, like, because you know yourself from doing everything, you know, I do the artwork and the shooting and editing of the music videos too, and the more you work at your craft, the more you distill what it is, you know, and you find your identity and you refine it and you make it sharp as you can. And I guess the artwork on that album as well, it touches on some spiritual ideas, but it also has that cold mechanical thing going on as well.
Yeah, it does. It's a really fascinating piece. I really enjoyed when I saw it, I was like, okay, now this is drawing me in even before I've heard anything. Mm-hmm. So it's very successful in that regard. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I was listening to it and I stopped. So I came back and the album starts off noisy, cool. I like it. And I'm enjoying it. And then suddenly No Legacy kicks in and I'm just drawn in. That song is amazing. I love it. It's powerful.
He's a
you, dude.
With this, are you the tyrant, the dictator? Is that everything? Are you doing the lyrics, the music and everything on that one?
Yeah, the process for that is basically I write the song, I write the music of the song basically, and then I am, again, I love saying how awful of a singer I am, but I'm an awful singer. But I know exactly what I want the vocals to sound like. So I write the lyrics, and then or I write the melody and then the lyrics, and then I go to Amber, and what I would do is record these videos of me humming what the melody would be.
Okay.
And give her the lyrics, and I would ask her to put her flair on that framework. So the melody is set more or less, and the hook is there, the scaffolding is there, but I want her to bring her personality to it and her ability to belt and soar with her voice. So there's a bit more of a collaboration in that sense. But one thing I got to say too is that the drummer who plays on that record is a collaborator friend of mine named Luke Folger, who's based in New York, and he's just one of these musicians who I met a long time ago, and we just have this instant chemistry to the point that I can just say, I need this, and this for the song, and we go into a studio and record those drums. I take those back to my bedroom and then build the album on top of it.
Oh, wow.
Death of the First Person I played bass on, but this album, another friend of mine, Ben, who is just this stupidly good bassist. He is just vicious. He reminds me of the bassist from Mars Volta a little bit, Juan.
Oh, wow.
He has that like 30-second note, 16-note ability with his fingers. He contributed bass to about half of the songs on Opt Out as well. So it got a little bit more collaborative in that sense, yeah.
And one of the things that I love is Amber's vocals, which, since this is really the first recorded thing that she's on, she's like a female Serge Tankian. It's just amazing what she does.
She would love that comparison.
It's a powerful, powerful album. Art Form is another track that I'm really loving. I love her vocals and the cacophony of sound behind her especially in the choruses. That's just such a cool song.
She is one of my favorite vocalists like I've ever encountered, and like to play live with her is just so sweet because it's you're just when you're in a band, you can kind of if you're the guitarist, you get to hide behind distortion and the loudness of the other members, and everyone hides behind each other, and it's safe. You have that out if you fuck up. It's just like, no matter, even if Amber's having a bad show with her voice or anything, like if she has a sore throat or something, she still just sounds fucking incredible. And to have that on stage all the time is just like, I'm so lucky, it's so great. And it's great on record, but like she just murders it live. I constantly just see people in the audience kind of like, oh wow,
eyes wide open. And
yeah. She's like a real talent. And when I first met her, I was just like, to me, it was such a shame that she didn't have just like a huge discography already out in the world, because she deserves to have so many records and people eyes on her, I think,
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like Everything Dysmorphia, that her vocals on that are beautiful, and the way the song ends with that chiming guitar that you have and her beautiful vocals, that's one of my favorites.
Yeah. One thing I always want to do is to juxtapose horrible, noisy, atonal dirge with just melodic beauty. You know, that's kind of a back and forth thing that kind of is a motif, I guess, for us sometimes. And she straddles both of those lines just with effortlessly, you know, and it's,
well,
I feel very grateful.
Well, what I like, the two of you do it together, and it works so well with your insane guitar sounds and then her beautiful vocals, and then when she wants to get aggressive, I mean, the two of you weave in and out of each other's ranges. It's just amazing.
Right.
It works so well together. It's like you've been playing together for years.
Thank you, dude. Yeah, I feel very grateful and lucky to have that other jigsaw piece in the band. And that's the thing, you know, I don't know when this lineup got together, it's probably been about 4 years, but obviously with the break of COVID or whatever. But the thing is, we hadn't been playing together for, 10 years previous before we met, but all of the experience we had separately in bands together helped us gel so quickly in this band, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely apparent. But earlier you mentioned that you don't like to enforce your interpretations on songs on the listeners. But I wanted to ask you, there has to be a theme to Opt Out, because the album title, Opt Out. And then there's song titles like Cancellation Policy, Dead Influencer, which is an insane track. That I love that song.
They build dark matter computers. Replay the surgery through the night. Revise, retold, and recounted. Signed, sealed, delivered, sealed, shown, sealed, shown. You've been sealed.
Terms and conditions, delete yourself, myth of the masses. I mean, there's definitely something behind this.
Yeah.
Do you want, are you open to letting me know what the thought process was behind this?
Yeah, I do. My favorite records, like, and I'm sure it's the same for you, you have your meaning for them, and that's what makes it special. Like when I listen to a Pearl Jam song, I like, it's associated with a certain memory at a certain time. But having said that, yeah, it's basically a concept album, I guess. I mean, a lot of it is, I guess the album, it's so hard to talk about some of these things in this day and age, but a lot of the album celebrates nuance and the gray area, not black and white thinking.
Okay.
It's a pushback against cultural.
We froze there. Damn it.
Oh.
So it froze on, it's a pushback against.
Oh, cool. So that's the mystery I'm never telling.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, sorry. It's a pushback against black and white thinking, I guess. It celebrates nuance and gray areas and civil communication. Civil communication is not the right word.
Discourse,
I guess,
maybe.
Discourse that is in good faith, and that is honest, and that is less about being part of a cult A or cult B, I guess. I know already that's going to put, some people are going to hear that and be like, but yeah.
Well, I think I understand what you're saying, because with the rise and proliferation of social media, you don't get open discourse anymore. You've got people on one side or another who've already made their decisions, who are just clashing. You don't get people open to other ideas. Yeah,
it's we live in a clickbait culture, essentially, and that's invaded every aspect of life. I mean, again, to kind of bring it back, like growing up, America was an exotic place for us. It was a far off land of like creative possibility. I'm not talking about like money or anything. I'm just like, so much great art came from New York, and like America is so beautiful geographically. And people, in general, people are really warm. And growing up, we loved it. We hated George Bush, like in 2001 or whatever. We were like, fuck that guy. And it was an easy target to hate. But now the landscape is just full of mini targets, and the hate has become everyone is living in such a depressive bubble, either against their own will or without even knowing it, or voluntarily. And there is still so much beauty in the world. There's still so much beauty in America. When people say they hate a country, you really should be saying, I hate the elements of government that are doing bad things. Like, you don't hate 420 million people or whatever the population is here.
Exactly.
We have this kind of like, we have this blanket speak for life, and it doesn't gel with real lived experience when you actually talk to people. And I guess opt out is like, you can take it at face value. Like I'm very, one of my fears is cult mentality. Like I've lost friends to real cults, like explicit cults, and I've seen people over the years fall into more benign cults. Everyone has that friend from high school who's in a pyramid scheme, and thinks they're, every week they have a new identity every week where they're like, now is how I'm going to be famous, blah 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 blah. And I'm like, you can think for yourself a little bit, and you can opt out of those things that. Just the crowd mentality, basically, because before you know it, you're 90 and you look back and you're like, well, the world has been ending since I've been 20, and I've just sat here being in fear and complaining about it my entire life. There is still a life to be lived outside of all this stuff. So
exactly,
and that's a controversial thought these days, and some people are not going to like that. But
I love it. I love the album. I mean, it's impossible to describe the album. I mean, the energy in it is tangible, which is very difficult to achieve on a recorded piece of work. I mean, it's an album that you really experience instead of just casually listening to. There's no casual listening to opt out. It's amazing. And Cinemartyr is not ambient soundtrack music anymore, but you do end it with a quieter song, and which seems to be on every album. It ends on a softer, quieter note.
Right. Yeah. I guess there's that filmic movie theme or concept, I guess, with the records. Like some of them feel like soundtracks, I guess, some of the earlier stuff. And I like the idea of a narrative that runs through a piece. And I think after you've been assaulted enough by these stabbing guitars, it's always nice to have a bit of time to reflect on what just happened, I guess.
Okay.
And I also I ascribe the whole creative process to, like, say you're not a great swimmer and someone throws you into the deep end. That's when you first start making records. You're splashing around, you're trying to figure out how to tread water. Then in the middle part of that, you figure out how to tread water, but now you're bored and you want to try swimming. So the creative process, you're constantly refining that I'm still learning how I want to incorporate ambient, not just ambient, but the more free-flowing, experimental, not premeditated side of music creation in with the very considered, premeditated side of noodling. Yeah, so it's a balancing thing. But I know the album is dead and all that, depending on who you ask. But I still just love, my favorite part of creating an album. Once the music is done, it's sequencing them.
Oh, yeah.
Deciding which tracks go where and naming them. I have a document on my phone that is about 1,000. At the moment, it's above 1,000 possible song titles. So for me, I hardly ever name them when I'm working on them. Then when the album is done and I have to get those final masters back, my favorite thing to do is to sit back and go through the 1,000 possible song titles. This song feels like that, and I work it down to 30 possible song titles and then distill it into the final 10 song titles. It's my favorite part of the creative process.
That's amazing. But, I love that.
I'll just be walking around and I'll be angry about something and a phrase will come to my mind. And then I'm like, that goes in the song title file, so.
Oh, that is so cool. I like that.
There's a lot of them. There's a lot of them I can't use that I would love to use that are just so horrendous. You would never be able to promote them. And there's some that are just way too niche. So you got to strike that balance too. But yeah.
What is the best way for people to listen to the album, to buy it and support you, and to check out where you're going to be playing on this tour?
So for the tour, just go to, I guess, our Instagram is always the best place for staying up to date with us. And there will be some micro adjustments to the tour, maybe a venue change for one or two of them. the venues. But if you go to cinemartyr.tumblr.com, that's Cinemartyr, Cinemartyr, Martyr.tumblr.com. That's where we have all of the dates at the moment, and it will take you to a link for the Facebook event, and a lot of those have ticket links on them. So if you want to see if we're in your state, you can just go to any one of those, and or just go to cinemartyr.tumblr.com. As for music, we're on Spotify and Bandcamp and all that. But most importantly, if you want the best in cutting edge absurdist memes, follow us on Instagram, because the stories we keep on there are the high point of a lot of our followers. That's the reason they follow us. I'm convinced at the moment.
Oh, awesome.
Yes, I curate a very tight ship on the stories.
Is that just at Cinemartyr?
Yeah, and it's at cine.martyr, so it's CINE.martyr, MARTYR.
I love the album. When we connected, I really wasn't sure what to expect, and then I heard, like I said, the first couple of tracks, and I was just like, wow, and that's what made me go back and want to start from the beginning and work my way through to the newest stuff. And it was a journey, for sure, and a really wild one, and I'm glad I took it. So thank you so much for the work you've been doing. Thank you for coming on the podcast and doing this episode with me. And
I appreciate it so much, dude. People like you make our lives so much easier, not in the sense that not in the promotional sense, but the fact that you keep the discourse alive around sometimes challenging music, sometimes obscure music, and everything in between, and we really appreciate that. It's always just so good to talk to someone who gets music in this scene, and I just really appreciate it, and thanks for having me on.